Hello, this is my first video that isn't about opening relics or just raw gameplay. In this video I will be showcasing the Fukuas up until Feathered Edges. This includes Rough Copy, Infernal Twin, Rain Shadow, Chameleon Twist, Soul Sisters, and Feathered Edges, as stated earlier. There will be a second part to this Fukua showcase, where I will then show Night Terror, Caporal Vixen, Phantom Threads, Shadow Puppet and then Splitting Image. This video is only my opinion in the variants and is nothing very official. I just want to show off some of the things Fukua is capable of and I will be posting a tier list of her at the end. Let's start off with the original, or rather the first copy of Fukua. Rough Copy. She is the worst Fukua by far in the game. Her signature ability requires you to be below 50% health for it to activate. Unfortunately, there are certain conditions that have to be met in order for her to even be useful. You have to be fighting someone of the same element type in order to get a permanent twist, while also having to fight the same character type in order to inflict them with permanent slow. So that means, if you go above 50% health then her buffs go away. If you kill the opponent and the next one doesn't meet any of the requirements, or you are just above half your health then Rough Copy's ability becomes useless. The only saving grace she has is her kit. Access to Miasma, Inevitable Snuggle, Twice Shy and Best Friends Forever at least lets her do something, if you do decide to fight with her. She still suffers from bronze stats, if you do decide to use her be wary of that. To make her usable I suggest just dumping a lot of attack and meter gain into her. The mobs that I recommend is Twice Shy, Inevitable Snuggle, Best Friends Forever, Taunt, and Lobs of Love for some meter control. Even with that I think past maybe 40 or even 30 prize fight streaks she won't be able to keep up with the larger health pools that the enemies gain, but I can't be certain. Overall, she doesn't do well in any category and should be the least prioritized Fukua on your list, unless you really want to invest in her. Next we have Infernal Twin. One of the best bronzes in the game, going past being just a good Fukua. Her signature ability is the first to be a counter-attack type of requirement. Rather than having to intercept like many other abilities require you to do or having to hit a dashing opponent, Infernal Twin has you hit an attacking opponent. The easiest way to activate this is to block and wait for the enemy to hit you, while you block. Once their last attack lands you can immediately counter-attack and gain an enraged stack. You can do this over and over, going up to 5 enrages which is a lot of damage. Every time you do this counter-attack, you refresh your enrages which essentially means you get 5 enrages for the whole game. That is assuming you can keep countering the AI. I still recommend the same move set from Rough Copy to use on Infernal Twin, but you can mix it up if you have some other moves with better stats. For example, if a good Night Kiss or Thrill of My Dreams rolls well, then use that over Lobs of Love etc. I personally prefer burst damage rather than high hit moves like Drill. The extra 2% of damage per hit is good in this move if it is used in the air, and if you pair it with the 5 enraged stacks then you can melt through some high health opponents very quickly. Another thing to note is that she is still a bronze character, so stats are not very high. Her HP pool is considerably low which makes her squishy and vulnerable at high streaks where the enemy gains substantial attack. She is paired best with a Draw the Center Valentine for any mistakes you may have during the fight, so that you can live long enough to regenerate some health through her moves or Valentine's regeneration buffs. As a whole, Infernal Twin is a very good bronze character to invest in. Costing only 487,000 coins and 273 skill points to max her out to be one of the strongest bronze fighters that can easily carry later on in the game. In the next clip you can see just how easy it is to bait the opponent to run up and attack while you block. This gives you the chance to counter and then dash back to bait another move from the AI. Overall, I consider Infernal Twin to be one of the top 5 best Fukuas. Now our third Fukua is Rain Shadow. Her signature ability is a hybrid-like one, being both good in offense and defense. The first one is not as useful, having the requirement to land a blocked hit that has a 15% chance to inflict power surge and armor break. This seems semi-useful if you are trying to bait an attack so you run off and hit the AI in block with the added bonus of some debuffs. The other thing is that this seems like a direct counter to Resident Evil in my opinion, who gains armor while being hit where, as Rain Shadow removes buffs in her side of the stage and inflicts armor break in a blocked hit. The second part of her ability is much more useful, as she can consistently remove buffs from the opponent. While on offense, you have to give up cornering the enemy and stay on your side of the stage. This isn't too bad, as you can just wait for the enemy to hit you, while you are blocking and then counter-attack. This on top of being inflicted with fatigue, which has a 50% chance to stun when it expires, makes Rain Shadow a good buff remover for offense. Now, if she is on defense and you put her in the corner, you are gonna want to bring a character with a high-level immunity taunt, otherwise you will suffer constant fatigue and stun while having your immunity constantly removed due to her signature ability. As a whole, I consider Rain Shadow a really good Fukua for both offense and defense, not exactly great or overpowered but she is good in both scenarios. Boosting heroic moves that increase her attack, meter gain and piercing will let you do a lot of damage or, if you want her on defense then boost her defense, HP, and meter gain to make her harder to kill and waste more time for your opponent. One thing I think brings her down is her lack of miasma from her special ability, but a few of the Fukuas are also lacking miasma-based abilities. This can be fixed by just equipping her taunt and having it leveled to be able to use it multiple times. I still recommend the same loadout as Infernal Twin for Rain Shadow and probably will for the next fighter as well. Here we have Chameleon Twist. An almost perfect Fukua in terms of offense and defense, but suffers from two flaws. The first being is her attack stat is the lowest of the three silver Fukuas. With not even 7.5 thousand attack at level 60 as a diamond, she suffers heavily in her damage output. Her other flaw is that her signature ability requires you to intercept an attack in order to gain miasma. This wouldn't be that much of a problem if intercept actually worked consistently. The thing with intercept is that it requires the AI to be in a running state and you must hit them in that state. With the current way the AI functions, they can get out of that state in a single frame, whether it be to block, attack, dash back or simply not be running, which makes getting stack of miasma that much more difficult. In the other hand, if you can successfully master the intercept mechanic, she gains miasma very easily and her low damage output is negated with the large amounts of health she can drain. She pairs very nicely with Evergreen Eagle, so her miasma and potential evasion, in the off chance you get hit, can last longer so you don't have to worry about intercepting as much. This paired with inevitable snuggling her taunt can make her have at least 2 miasma the entire game. If her signature ability was changed to be like Infernal Twins, then I personally believe that she would be one of the best silvers in the game. She would be the best Fukua for miasma stacking, and I would consider her maybe in the top 3 Fukuas if her requirement was changed to counter-attack instead of intercept. Her other ability makes her a bit more defensive, requiring you to be hit with a full blockbuster in order to gain miasma and evasion. This makes her great on defense if you have her HP, defense and meter gain stats boosted to make her gain blockbusters easily and keep her alive to gain miasma and evasion. Overall a really fun character that can use just about any loadout, but I would still use my recommended loadout. Now our final silver Fukua will be Soul Sisters. She is probably the easiest to play and understand. Her ability is somewhat similar to Toad Warrior, who gains 2% blockbuster meter by being close to the opponent. Toad also gets a 50% damage boost, while she has a full blockbuster. Soul Sisters, in the other hand, gains 2% meter, while being far away from the opponent and gains enraged per projectile hit, while far away. This is where you need specific moves in your loadout. Lobs of Love and Goodnight Kiss are a must for Soul Sisters. If you do D2, which is swiping right 2 times, you can have Fukua hit the opponent far away. While they are thrown across the stage, you will want to dash back as far as possible and use Lobs of Love as the enemy gets up. While Lobs of Love is in the air, you can then shoot Goodnight Kiss, so that Lobs activates the unblockable properties, and then Goodnight Kiss can also hit, granting you an easy 5 enrages. From here you can equip a second Lobs of Love for burst damage. For the other 2 moves I recommend Twice Shy and Best Friends Forever for high burst damage with 5 enrages. There isn't much more to her, since her signature ability is very straightforward and doesn't have any difficult requirements to activate. As of making this video, Soul Sisters is probably my favorite silver Fukua. The final Fukua is Feathered Edges. She is objectively the worst gold Fukua of the 4. Her signature ability is very niche and doesn't counter many things other than projectiles. In order to gain barrier, you must perfectly time a block against an attack from the enemy, and then you are granted 3 stacks of barrier and disable tag-ins and blockbusters for the opponent. This can be somewhat difficult to do, as the AI can attack sporadically, making it hard to time your block perfectly. If you do manage to gain the barrier, that adds 30% of health as a safety net for you. The barrier also acts as unflinching against projectiles and reflects 200% projectile damage back to the enemy. This ability, as well as her palette, is a reference to Falco's Shine that reflects projectiles back to the sender with an added damage boost. Unfortunately for Feathered Edges, her offensive capability is nothing like Falco's. Her attack is the lowest, copying Dreadlock's stats, which means her maximum attack at level 60 diamond is only 8.5 thousand. She at least has the second highest HP, right behind Splitting Image, which makes her decent for defense. For her loadout I recommend Burst, Twice Shot, Love Dart, Inevitable Snuggle and Goodnight Kiss to give her good zoning options and a way to heal herself. The only characters that can really be affected by Feather's reflective ability are Peacock, Parasol, and Robo Fortune. Other than those 3, many characters don't use enough projectile-based attacks to really make her a must-have defensive character. Her first ability to gain barrier and disable tag-ins and blockbusters is really what makes her useful. This is more so used better for defense, as the AI can block attacks with incredible reaction time. If you want to use her on offense, I would suggest giving her as much attack and special cooldown as possible. The only reason I could deal a decent amount of damage in Peacock's Master Story was by using my 100% attack and 50% special cooldown set from my Phantom Threads. The 3 stacks of barrier and meter control can make her semi-viable on attack, by giving herself constant miasma, extra health via barrier and meter control with miasma and her disabled blockbuster ability. The damage reflect portion of her ability is not a good risk to take, as you can easily get hit by a large damage dealing attack and lose your battle. Therefore that is not something I recommend to rely on heavily for her. Other than that, Feathered is just barely a decent variant to invest in because of Fukua's kit. She can handle pretty well in defense against projectiles heavy modisets, but is more than lackluster on offense. If she is your only Fukua, then she is an okay variant to start off with. I highly recommend Infernal Twin or Soul Sisters, because that ain't Falco. As for the rest of the Fukuas, such as Night Terror, Vaporwave Vixen, Phantom Threads and the Two Diamonds, I will be working on that video as soon as possible and can hopefully have it released quickly, with a better focus on quality, as this was my first time using Sony Vegas in years. I hope you guys enjoyed the gameplay and music choice. Let me know anything you would like to see showcased, and any feedback is greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you will like the next video.